All right. Hey, good morning, Robert.
Oh, hey, hey, how are you?
Good. How you doing?
Not too bad. It's more sunny days over here in Michigan, so this morning it was complete fog, awesome set for like a horror movie or something like this.
Nice.
And then it was like I ran out to lunch with a buddy of mine and it was still like completely fogged, and then I get back and as you can see, the window's overexposed because there's just like nothing but sunlight coming in,
Yep.
soaking it up over here.
Yeah. No, it's pretty nice here. We have some weird Santa Ana winds. It's actually kind of cold, um, but still sunny, and apparently it's nice at the beach, according to my brother who is over there by the beach. So um, maybe I'll
Nice.
head out. Maybe I'll head down to the beach later on this afternoon. So get some sun. So
Get that vitamin D.
exactly. All right. Well, today I wanted to talk a little bit about folder structure in Claude, and this could also apply to any of your AI tools. So if you're using ChatGPT or Gemini, basically they're all the same. The terminology might be a little bit different, but the structure itself is pretty similar. So this is kind of on top of what we talked about when we built that finance team, if you remember that. Um,
Yeah.
so hopefully that was very valuable and helped a lot of people start to kind of get into the agent building. Now, once you start crossing that line and you start building your team, you have to have a way to manage the team, just like you'd manage your team at the office. You have different departments, different roles and responsibilities, different operating procedures. So it's no different when you're building your agent team. So the key is to build a place where you don't have to teach every single agent everything about your company every single time, because that gets very very intensive. And then if you change one thing, you have to change all the agents. You got to go through and say, all right, we changed our branding, so everybody needs to change the way that we generate certain colors or certain fonts and things like that. So the idea is you want to have a folder structure where all of your agents can basically pull information on how to operate, and that could be anything from your branding, from your voice, from who you are, any kind of knowledge, anything that is a shared collective. You want them to be able to pull from that library of information and then use that as their basis to do their job, whether it's like finance. You may have an HR agent. And the second thing that you want is to have your agents learn and have a positive feedback. And so the way that you accomplish this is by setting up a folder structure that gives you a hierarchy and gives you reference points. And inside those folders is basically where all your instructions live. And then once you build this structure correctly and you want to update something, let's say, for example, Robert, you get rid of one of your product lines, and or in consulting, you don't want to do a certain type of consulting anymore. So you can just open up your operating procedures, pull that out, and basically say, and then replace it with, we don't offer this service anymore. And so now your entire team will basically be able to understand that and not put that into any of your marketing or any of your content or draft proposals. Um, so that is kind of how you want to view it, and a real simple way to think of this. It has another purpose as well. So think about it. If you're still using like ChatGPT and Claude or any of them, Gemini, in a conversational manner, which probably the vast majority of people are. So it's just that single thread conversation that you have, and then you start a new chat and then have another single thread. Um, Most of the tools are starting to build a persistent memory. They're starting to go, okay, who is Robert? Who is Brennan? and it starts to understand. So that's kind of nice, but it also has problems in the fact that I'm sure that most people out there use Claude or ChatGPT to do a bunch of different things to help them on marketing. Maybe you have a personal issue that you put in there. Maybe you want to figure out how to reconcile your checkbook. So that persistent memory starts to kind of know a lot. And when it gets really large, it can start inserting things that it thinks about you into your content that you don't really want to that you really don't want to be put in. So if I'm trying to do a business proposal and I'm just going off of my ChatGPT persistent memory, and I have a lot of chats on, I don't know, let's just say like how to build surfboards. So
Yep.
it might confuse that, and I might get a great proposal that it thinks it understands, but it's like, oh, and he likes to build surfboards. So there might be a line in there that says, oh yeah, and contact me if you want to build a surfboard. And that is not something that I want. So that's kind of one of the issues with just the single thread traditional model that most people are basically using today. And so we touched a little bit of how to kind of break out that model when we built the finance team. So the next step is really, okay, you know how to build an agent now. You've figured out how to tell it and do a single thread of something that you want. I want finance, or I want HR, or I want a content agent that drafts me LinkedIn posts, whatever the case is. So the next iteration is the team. So how do you get the content agent? How do you get the finance person? How do you get all these different agents? And then how do you get them orchestrated to all work together? So we're not going to build that live and show that, but I will share here in just a second some of the frameworks on how you can start to build that structure. And then once you have the framework correct, then you just start filling in the pieces and you start building it out, and then everything kind of drops into the right place. So I'll share something I did there, but I want to pause for a second and see what your thoughts were, Robert.
Well, so it sounds like the folders are just basically a labeling to call something a bucket of information to encapsulate instructions that you can get very detailed with to help expand out, how that baseline is working. And then it helps orchestrate those agents where they're basically focused on one element of that.
Correct.
Is that basically what okay. And then
Yep.
the other thing we wanted to take it to the next level and probably do in a later review is when you have multiple people like us or teams, you could put that folder in a location that's synchronized on different people's computers in different locations, and then they could still reference the same data set and use the team even with different accounts.
That is correct. And
Okay, cool.
so and so like one of the questions that people would have in a scenario like that is, if I build a big folder structure and it's all my instructions that I put together and I put it on a shared drive, and then Robert, you take your Claude and hook up to that folder structure, and you start asking the agents to do stuff. So one of the big questions is, is it my agents that are doing stuff, or is it your agents that's doing stuff? Is it my Claude that you're using, or is it your Claude that you're using? So let me clarify a little bit of how that works. So when just as you kind of simply explained it, the folders are just a set of instructions. That's essentially all they are. It has the instructions, it has the context, and it has information that fills that in. So once you put that in, and I tell your Claude, here's all the rules on how you navigate all these folders, and here's what each of these folders do, then your Claude understands that, and now it can interact in those folders, and you can basically do stuff, and that's independent of what you're doing. And I won't see that information, and vice versa. Now, there is one little exception to that, is that if you have a continuous learning loop that's built in and a logging session, then absolutely what you're doing in there will get logged, and start updating the stuff. And what I'm doing in there will get logged to start updating the stuff. So the continuous loop will be based on both of our efforts within that shared folder directory.
Right. Yeah. And I definitely want to test that and then make sure, because sometimes two different locations hitting the same file in the past has given grief, but I think now with modern applications like Google Docs or even Microsoft Excel, it's a shared kind of platform, so that shouldn't be the issue anymore.
Yeah, certainly. And if you have a little bit more advanced technology behind you, and you got a little bit of general database skills, you can write all that logging and a lot of that stuff into a optimized database so that you're not sharing locked files and running into issues there. That's a little bit more of a complicated build, but completely possible.
Cool. Yeah, this is really fantastic.
Yeah, so let me throw this up for everybody. All right. Okay, so it's a little busy, and but it's kind of fun. So I kind of like the format to kind of grab your eyes. But when you're looking at the basic structure, um, you're really building a personal knowledge assistant. So that's this first section up here is your PKA. So your personal knowledge assistant is taking a shift from your single threaded interactions to a multi-threaded interaction or an agent team. And the way that you accomplish this is by setting up a series of folders that allow that to happen. And then all the context is preserved, all the rules, everything that it knows about you is preserved, but it's preserved in a organized fashion with specific rules set behind it. So what that really means, to kind of clean it up a little bit, is you're moving from a dynamic versus static context. So in your single threads, that's static. It's all just your chat history. Maybe there's some persistent memory that's on top of that adds a little bit of context, but for the most part, it's static content. When you flip over to the dynamic model, there is opportunities to put in that continuous loop and continuous learning, and then it's always updating based on what you're doing within any of those folders.
Now, just pause on the folders with just like the static content. So we know in the folder there's instructions. In the folder, there can be a place where data comes back in after the agents do work on stuff based off your instructions. Data goes back and it can be put into Excel or database or Google Sheets, etc.
Yep.
Can you, because sometimes the LLMs have a limitation of how much data it's referencing. So if I have 1,000 ebooks, can I put those ebooks in the folder as a reference to expand kind of that context window or the reference window to use against, whatever I'm researching or doing?
Yeah, so that becomes your knowledge library, and I think I'd have to run some of the tests and really put in a lot of content in there to see how it handles that. But I think that's kind of a fundamental question. How do you take terabytes of information, put it into a spot, and then when you're interacting with certain agents, you're obviously not going to take 100 terabytes of information as your context because it's not going to understand that. So I think in a model like that, it's a little bit of creating the summaries and creating a research agent that goes in and understands what's in there, so that research agent can go into that big library, pull the pieces of information that is relevant for whatever task you're doing, grab it, and then put that into the context window for the other agent that is working on a specific task. So then you kind of break down the flow, and you're not loading 100 terabytes of information into one agent, which you couldn't do. But
Right.
the, so it's all in the way that you structure um, um, structure that folder and the material in that folder. And if it is something like that, Robert, that is giant, then you probably want like a librarian role and a logging role. So that's basically, for all the data experts out there, it's your kind of your knowledge management framework, your metadata. It's all that same stuff. It's just a little bit different in the way that you would handle it in an AI agent world.
Mm-hmm. Perfect.
Yep. Um, okay, so when you switch over to the T model, so we'll just skip down to the bottom here. You're now, just like in what we are discussing, you're not having one thread that is working for you. You're having multiple threads, and then that keeps your context window down. It keeps tasks spread to the right agent so that it's not clogging up what your objective is. So let's take your example, Robert, and let's just say that you're doing it in a single thread. So we'll just take one book. So say you loaded a book into ChatGPT, and you wanted some information. You wanted to summarize the book, and you wanted you want to report on that, and then you want to make some social media content. So those three tasks in the single thread, they're all going to have to load that context, and it's going to take a lot of tokens. It's going to take a lot of energy to do that. Where in the agent model, you could have an agent that goes and summarizes and knows where to get the information within that book. So that would be a researcher. And then, so in the content, you'd have somebody that would plan, right? So then the planner would go, okay, researcher, I need this topic researched. The researching agent would go find that topic, provide a summary, and then pass it back to the planner. And then the planner would pass that information back to your content writer, because you told the content writer, hey, I want to do a LinkedIn post about the best ways to write AI agents. And so now those three agents kind of work together to pull that information. And the one that you're actually interacting with is much more efficient, and the context window is much smaller because all the hard and heavy lifting has been done and pushed to other agents.
It's interesting how those agents are, replicating almost what China did with DeepSeek, which is they spread the compute down to smaller sets of quote unquote experts, and then they were able to essentially use less hardware by doing that split, because then it would go based off your query, would hit certain experts and only take up certain memory from the larger language model itself.
Yep.
And then here, basically, it's kind of the same routine with the agents, where we're trying to funnel information that's specific to the agent to do their thing, instead of bogging down the whole system on one query that the whole system basically puts effort on. You're partitioning it out, on the agents that are only going to take up a certain amount of tokenization.
Yep, exactly. And that's really the idea behind it, is that you don't want to have all this context jammed into one thread, because that is loaded every single time you ask a text or ask it to do something. Even if you have this huge context window where you've been chatting for, you're on your 50th message, and it's been doing all this stuff, and then you just want something simple like, the report is red and I want blue.
Right.
It's going to load all that in there. So that simple task, which is not a hard task, instead of it taking 100 tokens, it's going to take 20,000 tokens. Just because it's loading all that other stuff in. Whereas in a model with a distributed team, you could go flip over to the formatter. You have a design artist, and you go, hey, design artist, I want this blue instead of red, and then just grabs the report and does that. And now you're probably at like 15 tokens, because it's going to grab
Right.
the thing and just basically build it for you. So it's a lot more efficient in that manner. The other thing too that is really important to understand about building the folders is there's a lot of talk, especially, and you know this, Robert, with just people that we talk to,
Yeah,
clients and customers. They're always concerned about hallucination, about their voice, about wanting it to
exactly.
know. This is the way that you fix it, because this is the way that you give it full control. Just as you're running a business, every agent has a role and they have very specific things that they do, and there's specific instructions on how they do that. And because they're pulling from given data sets that aren't changing, the data sets that you're putting them in, like you mentioned, loading in all the books. If that is our that if that folder is our company, that folder isn't touched by any agents. That context always stays the same. So we're always going to get um, persistent information from that, because it's not making things up. It's not going, oh yeah, they kind of like these books and they kind of cover these topics just based on, they seem to do some stuff in finance. They seem to do some stuff in HR. So then it starts making stuff up. Oh, they're an HR finance team. Well, no, maybe not. Yes, maybe so.
Right.
Whereas if you have where you kind of pull that out, that ability out, and you have all that context, all that information into your SOPs, into your knowledge base, and each agent is just going and grabbing the pieces that it needs, it's going to give you real reliable results. So that's how you switch from kind of that hallucination model to something that is going to give you, if you have it really fine-tuned, really really good structured folder system, you're probably going to get 80% accuracy most of the time. And people are like, well, geez, 80% accuracy, that isn't good enough. And we can't use AI because it's only 80% accurate. Well, I'm going to push back a little bit on that. Your human workers are probably less than 80% accurate.
Right.
Uh, and so just think about this when you tell your one of your members, hey, I need a PowerPoint for this proposal that we're doing, and they go in and do a bunch of stuff. They make the proposal, they come back. Do you always get 100% output from that? And the answer is
No,
probably not.
this is why on a lot of my calls we have action items, because someone didn't readily have a photographic level memory like Rain Man to answer the question, and they have to
Right.
do, I'll get back to you on that. Let me talk to Ted over here and see what that is. It's basically the same thing. But I think a lot of people with associating results with computers is precision. And then a lot of the times we're talking about generative AI, where it's using generative aspects. Well, it can generate things that it's predicting is true. And then sometimes it might be off. But this is heavily restricting it to really, you're funneling basically its knowledge base to only this area, which is really putting your percent effective quite high, at 80%.
Exactly. So, and if you go in with that mindset and you understand that, that's why it's so important to have that human in the loop, because these systems aren't giving you precision. They're not giving you the 100% output that you want, nor could they, because you're asking for things that are kind of fluid, and they take a lot of different interpretations, and AI's interpretation may not always be the interpretation that you want. So that is the importance of having that human in the loop. So when you're building these agent teams, they're doing a lot, but the idea isn't necessarily to take people's jobs, but what it is to give the people a faster and cleaner way to get stuff that is more strategic, but they're still there kind of controlling the agents on how they produce output,
Right.
and basically the accuracy of that output. And then also the other thing I'll say, why it's really important to have a human in the loop. Let's just say you built the perfect AI team, and you got it at 99% accuracy. So every time any request you ever do, it spits out 99% accurate results. And you may be, great, I don't need a staff. But the one thing that I'll tell you that it will not do, it will not think outside the box. And
Right.
so if you want to push the limits on something, if you want to, hey, maybe the next big hottest trend is, ice cream on top of hamburgers. It sounds disgusting, but maybe somebody figures out that that's actually good. Well, AI is never going to suggest a business model about putting ice cream and hamburgers together because that just isn't logical. Um, so, um, so it's those types of things that outside of the box thinking that you really want to preserve, and the human in the loop, because even best you could probably hope for is 80%. Certain things and certain types of tasks, yeah, you can get higher on that, but I'm talking more of just an overall system, an overall team.
Right.
Yep. So if we switch over here onto the right side of the graph here, these are kind of there's three fundamental areas that you want to look at when you're building your folder structure. And probably the most important one is this person right here, which we've called Larry. And that is basically the role of the orchestrator. So when you're looking at any kind of folder system that you set up, you always want an agent that sits there and understands that entire structure, and it understands all the team members, and it understands how to interact with everybody. And that is their only job. And when you write like an MD file for the orchestrator, you want to be super clear. Your job is to not do anything except orchestrate where requests go. It is to orchestrate the team, help them figure out where a task should go. If somebody doesn't know what to do, the orchestrator steps in and kind of facilitates that. So that role is very important because you want to make sure that any of your tasks progress through the team in the way that you would do it in a normal business team. So, I guess in some ways, the orchestrator is kind of like a project manager.
Yeah.
Is
I was
basically
going to say,
what it is.
Can the orchestrator, depending on the file folder hierarchy, and again, folder is just a name, it just means the group of instructions, can that orchestrate multiple teams, or is it basically overseeing a team that might have a specialty in some type of domain?
The orchestrator should be able to orchestrate everything within your folder system. So in your folder system, might have 20 teams. You have HR, you have finance. So yeah, absolutely. Yep.
Perfect.
Yep. So you always want to start with an orchestrator, and then you want your inbox layer, and then you want an owner's inbox. And so these two kind of folders help you facilitate tasks, and then also are a place to collect reviews or responses that could later on be used for that continuous loop. So if you're getting output that you don't like, some of that information is recorded, and then that gets distributed to the right team member. So then it starts building examples, and that's where you get your continuous loop going. So for example, you ask your finance team to put together a business proposal, and they use pie charts as opposed to bar charts, and you just don't like pie charts. So you say, yeah, the proposal is great, but I really don't like pie charts. They never seem to work. I only want bar charts. So the orchestrator would see that was a negative response, and then basically could do a couple of things. They could put it into the owner's inbox and say, hey, is this something that that should be trained on? And you can say yes, and then that starts to get distributed across the rest of the team, so that pie charts aren't ever used in any of the future reports. So I know it sounds complicated on how to build all this. There is a little bit of complexity, but the key is to start simple with a basic foundation. And then the nice thing is that once you get the orchestrator and Claude builds the orchestrator for you, you can start to work with that orchestrator and how to build the teams. But you kind of give it a generic first structure and then work with it to start building out the framework. And I think, what we could do, Robert, is maybe on a future call, we'll actually build a real team, much like we did the finance thing, but we'll just build a structure and then start to build kind of a company so that people can see how these layered folders work and the
Right.
importance of each of them.
And I think in the previous one, we already prepped the folder structure and created the agents. This one would be the step before that, which is getting the folder structure and figuring out, going through the process of figuring that out. The other question I had, and this is the same thing I do with a lot of prompting. I create a prompt that its objective is to get me a highly sophisticated prompt that then I can use to get my result. In the same regard, is there either like an agent prompt or an agent team we could build that its purpose is to help us build out an agent team that's very sophisticated, has really good in-depth instructions, because then we could use that to crank out many different Claude agent teams.
Yeah. So specifically in Claude, it has what's called a skills creator. So they already have the logic and the training built, and you just pull up the skills. It's actually /skills, and it'll come up. And basically a skills document is an agent. So so right now everybody's calling it skills, but that gets kind of confusing. So you do a finance skill, you do a HR skill, but really to put a little bit more personality on it, then we basically call those agents. So the agent has the finance skill. The agent has the whatever different skills. So in Claude Native, that feature comes shipped out already. So you just pull up that command, and it'll help you draft really good skills. Now we could what you're mentioning is you could take it one step further and build a small team that helps you build big organizational teams. So
Right.
that is definitely possible. But I think that might be a little, that may not be,
Overkill.
yeah, it might be a little overkill. Maybe if you're trying to build this
That's the name
across
of my
your
game, Brennan. It's always 10x everything. 10x.
Well, the thing is, we'll build that, and then we can just basically take that into AT&T, and we'll just go, all right, our little agent team, our little small team here will build your entire corporate,
Right.
Your entire corporate map. That'd be kind of fascinating, actually. So okay, so you have the orchestrator, you have some inboxes for the owner's inbox and the team inbox. The next important set of folders that kind of sit above everybody is basically your business knowledge. So this is where, like you were mentioning, Robert, this is where your library of books would go. This is all your SOPs, your branding instructions, anything that you have that is concrete and specific. It's basically, it becomes your single source of truth for the agents. So those three things are basically the simplest structure. Once you have those, then you can start building all of your team members and different things below that. And then each of your team members that you start to build, you can actually give them instructions on how they interact within the BKM. So, and then how they interact with the orchestrator. And basically you can build roles and rules within each agent as you start to build underneath these first four things up here.
Okay.
And then once you have that, and so like this hypothetical team here has a PAX, has Nolan, and then you have the research group. So you define how these roles work, what they do, how they interact. So maybe Nolan doesn't ever really go into the BKM. Maybe Nolan interacts with the research team, and the research team is the ones that go into the BKM and pull the research and bring it back and give it to Nolan. So, however you want it to work is is really what you would set up. And again, it sounds a little confusing because this is all virtual, but I'm going to simplify it for everybody. It's exactly how your team works today. So if you're running a sales team, and let's just say you got a service, you got 5 service delivery team members, you have your director, you have your bid team, and you have your proposal team or your pricing team, right?
Mhm.
All those members are part of your team and your organization. They all have rules on how they interact with each other. So you want to duplicate that same thing. So if the pricing team basically only does pricings that come from your proposal team that are ready and legal approved, and there's check marks and things that say yes, this one is ready, now it goes off to this team. You want to duplicate those same type of instructions when you're building your virtual team. So you're really stepping back and you're building a flow within your business or your business organization. And where are those handoffs, what are the roles and responsibilities, and who gets to do what work. And if you do it properly, just like you would do your human teams, then you're going to have a good agent team. So just like in your human team, you don't want you don't want somebody from the proposal team throwing in pricing because they don't understand the pricing. So they should never do pricing, and that's logical. The proposal team puts the proposal together, but the specifics of the pricing is going to go to the pricing team so that they can go do research, figure out margins, all that fun stuff. So same logic here.
So, going back on that statement you made that, making sure that you've got the right agent to do the right job, going back to building the team after you create the orchestrator, is the skill builder that Claude has built in enough to make sure that you don't, if you're building a team, you don't miss somebody that should be on the team that you just forgot about? Is that built in there, or is that relying on your institutional knowledge to make sure that you pick the right agents?
No, that's relying on your information. Now,
Okay,
you could ask Claude though. You can go. Let's
that's
just
what I
say,
was thinking with a
yeah,
team builder, right? It's like you could never miss out. Like I love NASA. Oh, okay. You know what? I want to build my own NASA team. I don't have a clue on who does that stuff at all. I can
right.
only guess. So I want like almost like a system that I just said, oh, I need a NASA team. And it's like, oh, what do you want? Propulsion? You want blah, blah, blah. And then I say, I want propulsion. And then it's like, here's 50, people that can do things, but what do you want to do in propulsion? And then it basically kind of gets me there. But it sounds like the Claude one, you have to basically, you're already kind of telling it, you already have an idea of what your team is and how that would structure, which is a lot of the times good within your area of expertise. But then when you're going out of that, then it gets a little fuzzy on who actually does the jobs.
Yeah, yeah. So so a simple example here would be if you want to be a solopreneur, right? Okay, so I got this business idea. I can manage it myself, and but let's say I don't know anything about business. Where you would start is you go, what are the typical teams that are needed to run a business? Well, you probably need a HR team. You're going to need a finance team. You're going to need a sales team. But like Claude would probably help. Claude or ChatGPT, any of them could help you build what the fundamentals of those teams are. And then that's basically you kind of iterate with that, and you're right. You look at the results and go, oh yeah, okay. We need a sales team. We need a marketing team, and within the marketing team, there's these roles. We got to produce content. We got to approve content. We got to set up branding, and then
Right.
you can go as deep as you want or as shallow as you want. So maybe all the marketing functions could be handled by one agent because you're just a solopreneur. You have one product. You don't need an extensive branding team that does like 27 different functions. So in that case, then you get to Claude and go, hey, I want I want a skill drafted for somebody that is that knows all the latest marketing trends, knows about colors, all that stuff. And then Claude will do a pretty good job with the skills builder, builds you the skills, and then that becomes your agent. And then basically once you get that skills document, which is your like Claude MD file, you can go in there and then modify it to whatever you want. So you can get the basis, and then again, back to one of the examples, you don't like pie charts, so you can put it in there. Oh yeah, by the way, you do not. We are not allowed to use. You're not allowed to use pie charts. You can only use bar charts. So that's how you start to modify it to what your business is and what your preference is. Yep.
And then we have a couple people on here also viewing from LinkedIn. So if you're watching on LinkedIn, you have questions. Just I'm looking at the comment section to make sure that we pick them up. But just drop them in there, and then we'll answer your questions on there. Cool. So we went through all that, and then what else? Okay, so basically orchestrate, build the team, assign the right skills to them so they have specialization, and then you've got all that. You have data that it's referencing. Then what's the I guess what's the last part of our blueprint, or does that sum it up?
That's really it. So the last part is then starting to build your team out. So once you kind of have that top structure, you have your orchestrator, you have your knowledge management, you have some folders to manage requests. That is kind of your fundamental starting block. And then after that, now you start building everybody below. And your logic and SOPs, your knowledge management system, that is basically where you can fine tune everything and make sure all the agents below now have consistent results. So
and you can change all this. As you go through, you could change everything as you're going through and iterating with results. Maybe marketing needs another person that does specific, animations or whatever it is. You just iterate from there based off the results that you're getting, etc.
Yep, exactly. And now, the one thing that is not covered in this basic model to get you started is that feedback loop. So that is something that that you have to kind of build in. So once you start getting the team and you get the orchestrator that is monitoring all the requests, at a certain point, you would probably there's a bunch of different ways you could do it, but one way is you could basically put in another folder that basically logs all the transactions. And you want to do that anyways. You want to log all the transactions because that helps you with some of the persistent memory and the continuous learning. So the logging of the transactions is going to get you the learning part, or actually the logging and evidence part. The learning part is then having an agent in there or some type of feedback loop where, if you say, no, this wasn't right, or you got to go back to the drawing board or something like that, then it creates that log in there. And then the orchestrator could see that and route that to the right agent. So if that's the research agent that comes back and is pulling, pulling research from YouTube shorts that aren't making sense, then you could basically, part of that feedback loop is that, no, that wasn't right because YouTube shorts aren't valuable enough. It's not deep enough. Don't use that. So that goes in there, and then that would automatically update the research team's skills. So that's kind of the point that you want to get to, is that there's a little loop that helps your entire team get better over time as you start to use it.
Very cool.
Yeah. So it's really powerful. And the biggest thing is to start small and just kind of test it and see if everybody's doing what you want. But the most important thing is defining how everybody works with everybody, how the folders interact, how the agents interact, and what rules do you put on top. If you kind of master that, your team is going to work really well. If that is kind of real loose and there's not a lot of rules, well, then you might get rogue agents. You might have somebody from HR, your HR team, put a pricing proposal together. It'll look nice, because they can still do nice work, but it's not going to be in the context that you want. So
Right. It's like having your PM try to program something.
right, exactly.
Yeah, this is cool. So next session, we can go over building that folder structure. We could probably spin up a sanitized environment for that. That way we can share the screen like a VM or something like that. Go through it, build it out. And then what we can do, Brennan, is over the weekend, Monday, Tuesday, maybe we blast out some messages and get feedback on what kind of agents to build out of that. What
Yeah.
maybe somebody's interested in, because I know we did the example with the finance team, and then we already have internally, we have our content creation team. So maybe there's another team that people are looking for. Sometimes when I'm working with clients, they're going through their own issues, and they might be updating Python code and looking for issues with their Python. And I was actually just thinking while you were going through this, I was like, oh, I wonder if we can develop a team that you give it the Python code, and it basically vets it out, checks it for security, checks it for wrong things, updates it, and then spits out an updated Python code. And you basically you point it to a repository and say, clean up this mess. Make sure that this repository has clean code in it and all that kind of stuff. And then you basically go through that. That would be pretty useful for some companies. But anyway, we'll take people's input, and then we'll be ready for it by next Friday.
Yeah, definitely. And what I'll try to do too is maybe I can build a little bit of what the actual structure looks like. This is just kind of a fun, infographic, but I do have it in a lot more boring format, but it's more functional, and I think that would give everybody a really good view of what it looks like. For discussions on this type of format, it would be kind of boring because it's going to look like some folders, and you click on them and they open up. So not the most exciting for discussing, but I can put that together, and then we'll post that on LinkedIn. So just look for that post on LinkedIn, and then you can just grab the basically the I don't know what I'll call it, the just an open template, and you can grab that, give it to Claude, and then basically have Claude start from right there, and then you can start filling in the details.
Sweet.
All right. Well, yeah, that's all I had for today, Robert. I kind of want to share that with everyone because I think it is important. So hopefully this was useful for everybody watching. But yeah, that's about it for this topic right now.
Okay, cool. Well, I've got a few news items that came up that I think are very interesting in the world of AI. So you probably already heard this, but this is going to make it just makes me laugh even to think about it. So on Wednesday the 15th, today's the 17th, April 2026, a sneaker brand in San Francisco announced, guess what? Their existing footwear business is gone. It is becoming an AI infrastructure company. This is like the ultimate pivot from going from shoes running to now you're running infrastructure for AI because of the AI boom.
Wow.
And then, interestingly, the market I can't hold my composure. The market reaction was essentially explosive. I don't know if this reached. I have to go on Reddit and see, and go on Wall Street Bets to see if it was the talk of the town. But anyway, they went from 39 million in stock, and that blew up to 4 billion valuation because of this, based off their Nasdaq ticker. So that was like a 500% increase.
Wow.
on there. The company is rebranding. They were called All Birds, which
Huh.
was the shoe company. Now, guess what? I don't know if they used one of their own agents as a marketing team for this, but they're now called New Bird AI. They're brand new. It's like a phoenix, you know, especially
Wow.
with their shareholders' money coming out of their ears now. Um, it's
I just,
anyway. They're
uh,
What do you think about that, Brendan?
I there's just so many things wrong with that, but like,
I tell you, I think this is like the put this down on the calendar. This is probably the inflection point of where were with the internet boom and bust.
yeah,
Where it was trees.com, pets.com, elbowlotion.com, everything that you
yeah,
could think of. It's like if shoe companies, they don't even have infrastructure. They just have machinery. If they can go to it, AI infrastructure and then go up 500%, this is astonishing. Anyway, that was $2.49 a share to $24
wow.
a share in a basically one day. That would have, gosh, could you imagine investing a million bucks into that at the right time? That would just be crazy.
Well, Robert,
Anyway,
did I tell you that that I'm turning my house into an AI data center and I'm looking for investors? So, I'll just drop the link.
yeah,
I'll just drop the link here.
yeah, that's oh yeah. I'm renting out. I did do the basement, but you know what? No, it's basically can it be used for one of your AI servers?
I
Oh
did.
man, this is it's a crazy time. That's
It is. I did see
anyway,
a.
and then there's yeah.
I was just gonna say I did see a post, and somebody was trying to get investors and people together. It was kind of in this line. The post was, we all have extra space. We could all put in little mini data centers in our homes, and then stop these big footprints, and then protect the AI grid. Who's with me? So I thought that was a pretty funny post. And like, well, I don't know how that would work, but I mean, that type of model does work on distributed computer space. Before all the fancy graphic cards and things like that. Um,
Right.
I
Yeah,
I
it's
don't know exactly how it worked, but they would go and grab little processing bytes from computers all over the world to make one big super.
yeah, that's referred to as grid computing. And a big grid computing um, well, they used to also do that for trying to look for malaria vaccine, because I signed up for that, where essentially you had an agent that was on your computer, and it was almost like Bitcoin mining. They would take CPU percent off you, and then help them aggregate that to basically make their calculations. And then another well-known institution that did that was actually SETI Online, where they would record radio signals, chop up the radio signals into bits or small slices, and then you would have SETI Online agent on your computer, and then essentially run that. And in fact, when I used to work at UPS, we had like a little competition of who processed the most SETI, and we had our own little charts. And then when I was going to college, I found out they didn't have admin access on all the labs. So I went around and installed, I think it was like 85 agents on 85 computers. And I basically made them my data center
Wow.
for SETI. And I basically, nobody could catch up to me after that, because all they had were Pentium, the Pentium 2s and stuff like that, the dual, like that. And I was like basically destroying everybody. uh,
Oh, that's great.
anyway, that brings back some times there, Brennan, with the grid computing. Yeah.
Yeah.
I've got so one other thing, we're talking about agents. So basically, today, a company called Andon Labs revealed their latest experiment. They gave an autonomous AI. I'm not muted. Okay, I hit my button by accident.
Yeah.
They gave an AI agent named Luna $100,000 budget, a corporate credit card, and a 3-year commercial lease. I'm not. I got to research more about the commercial lease. And the directive was Luna was instructed simply to turn a profit. Like they were like, here you go, make it happen. And then running on a hybrid, they use Claude and Gemini models, and the AI independently created a boutique retail concept, posted job listings, and interviewed human candidates over Zoom with the camera off on the other end. I guess they couldn't pay for the you know HeyGen's AI deep fake. And then while they had a few hiccups, including accidentally trying to hire a painter from Afghanistan,
Wow.
they would have traveled to San Fran through TaskRabbit. Luna is now actively managing a physical storefront and human staff. What are they selling? I don't know. Like
Now I'm really curious.
right. Yeah, I feel like I need to go down there. Oh, is this a dried up Twinkie? How much is that, Luna? It does not go bad, Robert. um,
I'm gonna
anyway,
see.
and then we've got 3 minutes left, so that was like my little tidbits of news.
Yeah, that is fascinating. I know there's been a few experiments. There was another experiment that I saw where somebody basically did that. It wasn't a huge budget like that, but it was basically start up a company, assign the roles, and do it all with agents. And at first, it started off pretty good, and then what happened as it progressed is that all the agents just started getting into this continuous loop of um, trying to expand and get better ideas. And so it just kind of just it went into this infinite loop, and then they never got anything. And the
That,
quote unquote
that
agents have never got
orchestrator,
anything done.
right? That orchestrator failed as a project manager. They needed a
Yep.
hold, a come to your pick your favorite deity call, and then basically crack down on all the other agents.
Yep.
uh,
All right. I wonder if this is up. There's this Luna startup studio. Do you think that is it? Trusted legal accounting.
how far is it from you? I think on next Friday, change everything. We're going to do a live feed of you going shopping at that location
I
for
see.
boutique though. So you better bring your Amex Black card. You
Oh
know,
yeah. This is I don't think this is it. This makes it easy to combine legal, accounting, and taxes all in one place. Fractional CFO, fractional. Yeah, this is probably not it. But it says all in the startup world.
right?
But no, I don't think that's it. Yeah, I'm curious. Yeah, if I if the store was closer, I would love to do that. We'll just do a live stream. The first AI products ran by AI.
There has to be someone from TikTok, that went there.
Yeah.
Or, who knows? I'm going to look that up. I saw that this week and I was like, this is going to make my day reading this. Anyway, we've got to run. Thanks everybody for the time. And again, give us some ideas. What do you want to look at, for our next show on the type of team that we're building based off the folder structure, which are the skill sets. So let us know.
All right. See ya. Till
Take
next
care.
next